Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Boy, do I got an interesting one for you today. We got three topics that I want to cover. First and foremost is you really need to check out the ATF's videos on Forbes, where Forbes has just let those videos fly. They're on YouTube. You get to see the ATF get tuned up in no short order by lots of senators or representatives. Most importantly was the one that, in my opinion, was Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan puts it in no short order. Neither does Thomas Massie on who the ATF is coming after with their new pistol brace ban. They also brought up, all of them did, but Thomas Massie and Jim Jordan specifically brought up how the bump stock ban was an executive fiat and still is being overturned by the good folks from GOA and FPC who have found a way to get the courts to side correctly on our behalf. The second topic, Illinois had a assault weapons ban that was passed during their last session, and FPC, it looks like, got a stay of execution, as I would put it, in that they are not going to be able to execute a stay on, or not be able to execute their ban. That's the best way to put it. So Illinois is now safe for a little while, but they'll continue, and they're, these hardcore leftist strongholds. I mean, we already lost Washington State. Washington State has pretty much lost all of its modern day 2A rights. Colorado, while they whistled through the graveyard and this is the third topic, whistled through the graveyard for a gun weapons ban or a assault weapons ban, they did end up getting 4 bills passed that suck for anyone. The first one is there is now a 3-day wait period for any individual buying a firearm. The next one is they repealed the limited liability protection for firearms manufacturers, distributors, dealers, and importers. This bill allows individuals to bring a civil suit against a gun and ammunition manufacturers, sellers for the simple act of selling a firearm. The idea here is that the left wants to demonize gun manufacturers, ammunition manufacturers, and prosecute them so much so that they go out of business. That's how they see their way of getting their way, is that they're going to force these people out of business. The next one denies the Second Amendment rights to anyone 18 to 20. So they have put an age limit in on the Second Amendment. That one, I believe, will be overturned pretty quickly because there's no way that can happen. There's national case precedence that says that can't happen. Finally, Colorado got the red flag law, just like New Mexico and several other states. This is something that the nation is trying to push. Biden has mentioned this several times. You need to be careful. What this is it's basically an unconstitutional gun grab, in that anyone who says you're a nutcase or that you are mentally unstable, they don't really have to have proof. You don't get your day in court until after the fact. They will come to your house and confiscate your firearms. Now, we've had these in New Mexico, and law enforcement has been very reluctant to use them because they use other means. If someone is having mental issues, they can 5150 them, put them in for psych evaluation. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words this morning. Psych evaluation, and let them get taken care of that way. Red flag bills tend to, for most law enforcement, are people that are actually kind of pro 2A. It sits wrong for them because anybody, your ex-girlfriend who's pissed off at you, your neighbor who's pissed off at you for the weed that's growing on the property line, they can set out a red flag law against you, or a red flag injunction, which means that your firearms are then confiscated, and then you have to have a day in court to go in and actually try to get them back. So you're the one that's on the hook for all the expenses that are along that line. In the same vein, I'll continue on. The IRS is now looking for 87,000 new field agents to go confiscate taxes. If you haven't noticed, there's a banking collapse, and JP Morgan just bought FPR, I think is what it is, or FPC. It's a federal bank. I think it's FPR. Anyway, what that does is it means that all the bigger banks are going to be gobbling up all these littler ones as they fail. I believe this is still blowback from the 2008 financial crisis, and we're just now seeing it now. Why is that a big deal? It means that we're going to see an economic crisis. I think everybody in my audience and anyone that's got two eyes can see that inflation isn't stopping. Despite what they're trying to do with the Fed to raise the interest rates, there just simply isn't enough people to absorb that, and we're actually running, economically, we're running on two problems here. We have a supply problem and a demand problem when it comes to the economic model, and that's going to cause issues. We're going to be looking at inflation for at least 10 years until our younger generation can get into the workforce. The rest of the world, as they ditch the American dollar to try to build a multipolar world, I don't think that'll work, but that's just my own opinion. A lot of people are saying now's the time to ditch the dollar and get, go digital and go totally crypto. The problem I have with that is, what is crypto's store of value? I have some crypto. I played with it, and I still have it. And the reason why I got some was just because it's interesting to me, and I'm interested in the smart contract part of like Ethereum. But it's interesting when you start thinking about this, that there's more and more people that are trying to push you towards crypto when there's really no store of value but the American dollar, at least right now. So it makes no sense that we would be, gold and silver, you have a tangible asset. Land, you have a tangible asset. Crypto, you have no asset. If that goes away, if for some reason the Fed, and they have done it in the past when they went after people that were using that for hacking, specifically the Russians, to get money, they managed to get it. They still haven't, I don't think, got it out of the wallet, but they still got it. Now, we live in different times. There's a lot of people like Glenn Beck who's talking about AI and how it's so dangerous, and it is. There's a lot of things that we're not prepared for, and I think that our country is in a little learning bubble after COVID, that we're still trying to realize who's on our side and who's not. Now, for some of us, during the 2019 and 2020, that's when we woke up. I'm one of those people, and decided that there was absolutely no way I was going to ever depend 100% on the government again. That being said, today is my first day in my actual business of my own, so I'm excited. I'm dropping this before I head out the door to go to work again. After 4 months, I've finally dotted my I's, crossed my T's, and the federal government and the state government are allowing me to get to work again on my own business. So I'm excited. I think that I'm hopeful. It just so happens that my new business kind of fits with a downturn, if you put it that way. It's one of those vice businesses like alcohol or tobacco or anything like that. Those rarely see a decrease in this type of economy we're going into, and that's what type of business I'm in now. I'm excited to see FPC and GOA going hard and heavy after these guys. I will work on my Rumble stuff to drop tonight for all you guys that have been interested in my Rumble channel. Thank you very much. Like, share, subscribe always on all my media chat platforms. My podcast, my Rumble chats. If you want to find me on Twitter, Spawn082 is my handle. If you want to find me on Facebook, you can look for Black Rifle Operators Union. Some reason they've changed it. It used to be New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union, but they dropped that for some reason. And I'm guessing that there was some people in New Mexico that were getting a little pissed off at that. But it is New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union, and that's how it will always stay. I am uniquely New Mexican, distinctly American, and I think that's what we can say for all of us. Now, the other cool stuff I've seen in the 2A world, I've been looking a lot at these 3D printed guns, and I think that they're amazing for a number of reasons, that the technology is advancing, and that with this type of technology, there's no way they can ban firearms. They can try till the cows come home. They can ban manufacturers. They can bankrupt manufacturers, but as long as there are people that are willing to exist and have the knowledge and willpower, the 2A will exist forever. That said, I'm seeing more people coming out in support of Matt Hoover from CRS. Like I said, if you didn't know about Matt Hoover made a little toy called the Auto Keycard, or not, he didn't make it, he was marketing it and selling it. This has now been defined as a fully automatic machine gun, even though it is nothing but a business card and a bottle cap opener for beer bottles. But the ATF managed to, get one out of the 4 to work, and it didn't even really work. It just had a hammer strike after a hammer follow. But they're still prosecuting this man, and he's looking at 110 years. So look up his stuff if you want to contribute to his funds. I hope I'm never in the same stead, but, it is possible, as I open my mouth pretty regularly about the 2A and how they're trying to infringe upon our rights. I'm getting traction on Facebook, believe it or not. Mr. Guns and Gear, Mike from Mr. Guns and Gear, has liked and, shared some of my stuff, and I've shared some of his all the time. So I'm excited about that because, he's not a little dude, and it's kind of cool that he joined Steven Crowder. I don't know about all the stuff that happened over the last week. I guess Steven Crowder is getting a divorce, and there's a ton of stuff along with that. Don't really care. Steven Crowder's always been a little bit arrogant for me anyway, but I like that he's sticking it to the man and standing up to people and saying no. The Washington state's rationale for banning the assault weapons, if you look at what that's going on there, it doesn't stand up, and there's a very high possibility to get repealed. The same goes for the pistol brace ban in the United States with the ATF. If you got anything from the stuff I was talking about, and you watch the stuff that Forbes has been putting out, which I think is interesting that Forbes magazine of all media outlets would be covering these hearings in Congress, where you have the ATF, Dittelbach, I think is his name, who's being grilled, and he's made to look like a fool. Now, some of these videos may be edited and cherry-picked, but even if they are edited and cherry-picked, holy crap, they're pretty damning, because he's willingly admitting that they had to change rules and definitions just to get their way. And that shouldn't hold up in court. Now, I say this because if you look at what's going on with CRS, this guy's case shouldn't have made it as far as it did, and he got convicted. We're fighting a culture battle where there's a lot of culture warriors. There's 2 new guys, little kids that are entering the fray on Twitter, talking about how they will get these guns banned and whatnot. And then they're found out to be Democratic paid shills. So you can bet your money that people like George Soros and other heavily financed people will be backing anything to get rid of the American right to self-defense. And that's just what it is. You cannot live in today's society and see what's going on around you and not feel that you need to be able to defend yourself. And if you do live in that environment and you have no problems existing in that environment where you don't feel like you need to be defending yourself, you're not paying attention. There has been too many incidents where people have been accosted, their property's been stolen, and then you have these stories like what happened in Texas. So in Texas, there is an illegal immigrant who killed 5 people this weekend with an AR-15. Now, the weapon doesn't matter, and it looks like he executed them. But more importantly, how did an illegal immigrant get a firearm? Someone had to do a straw purchase. So again, this goes back and speaks very to the core, not highly, but speaks very to the core of why gun bans don't work, is that there's always a way around them. And that you cannot, murder's always been illegal. You can't make it more illegal. And people that are willing to commit that violent act really don't care. And they have no problems with committing one crime. Why would they have a problem committing multiples by having the firearm that allowed them to do it in the first place? So it's very telling to see what the left is so pissed off and outraged about when we all, I would say most of us Americans, myself included, wonder why people are so easily able to cross our borders. You know, as a libertarian at one point, there's a discussion to be had of if an invisible border really matters. It does, because it's national identity. You can't have a country without borders. And our country is ours, despite what lots of people like to think about in the world. And you cannot look at the stuff that's going on without coming to the conclusion that I am. There are people actively trying to destroy parts of American life. They're after the nuclear family. Why? Because it is a core tenet of how America works. And I can get into that in another podcast if you're interested. Chime in and send me an email. You can send me an email at atin082@gmail.com. But what's interesting about this is that when I say the nuclear family, okay, you know, what I'm about to say is going to be very controversial, but it's very correct. And that's kind of my go-to anyway. That's kind of what people will say about me. Is all this transgender stuff that's going on with people is really kind of self-correcting. In 20 years, the U.S. will be more conservative and more right-leaning than it ever has been, because those people are self-destroying themselves. They're taking themselves out of the gene pool. They're the first ones that are okay with aborting a child. They're also the first ones to be okay with the kids transitioning and taking themselves out of the gene pool without much discussion. And I think that we're about to see a huge wave of young kids that were lied to and said that they could transition back, just to find out that that is not a simple switch, and that's going to be very costly, and that's going to be very, very painful. And it's on those people that are promoting this right now. You know, I fully believe this is a social contagion to a huge degree. Because I've talked to my sons, I've talked to my daughter, and yeah, there are people that are trans. And you know, I can admit that there were a few when I was in high school. But they figured things out, and they didn't need a lot of press around it. They had other issues going. And I think that society is too eager to jump on a bandwagon of someone that they feel oppressed or that they see oppressed and adopt their cause. And to that end, when you start talking about a group of people who are probably the least marginalized online or in real life because they have enough stroke behind them right now, are now claiming to be genocided and the most oppressed in the country. You know, you can talk about racial relations, and inevitably their struggle comes up because it's more of a struggle than, you know, a black man in the 50s. So this is where I think society will schism and start splitting things off. I think that as we're watching the rest of the world implode, the United States will have its growing pains, and we will eventually get through it. It's just going to suck, because there's going to be these fights and infights that we keep having about stupid things. We shouldn't have to be fighting about our rights. These were ingrained, you know, when our country was founded, and you cannot rewrite or change definitions without a fight. And that's where, you know, this podcast comes into play. Is an assault weapon technically does exist, but it's like an MG42 or STG-44 or a real Kalashnikov AK-47 with all the original pieces in it, and the M16 with all the original pieces in it. Those are assault weapons. You looking at a modern-day AR-15 or an American Kalashnikov and saying that that is an assault weapon is a bastardization of the word. Number one, they're missing some very key components to make them assault weapons. They cannot go fully automatic. And full semi-automatic is not a thing. No matter how many times you try to make it a thing, it's not a thing. Once you pull one time on the trigger and one round goes off, that's semi-automatic. Okay? You going after the assault weapon when pistols are used for most of the crime in the United States makes no sense. And the average American knows that. And now that you've gotten the poll numbers in where there's 60% of Americans have firearms now, you're keeping to push this narrative, and there are people that are pushing back and saying no. And that's where we're going. These culture war issues, they piss me off more so than anything because they don't matter. In the long and the short of it all, what matters is defending our kids, of course, when it comes to some of those cultural issues. But the cultural issues that are the most key that keep popping up will sort themselves out. You're already seeing people in Canada, young kids in Canada, running away from this trans movement and this ideal. That same thing's happening in the United States. It's just happening on a smaller level because it's very popular here. And once media starts collapsing, which it already is, case in point, you can look at Tucker Carlson leaving Fox News, and then their plunge in media numbers tells you all you need to know about the media. After COVID, people woke up, myself included. We started realizing just how broken the media was and just how much of an organ of the state they really are. And that's where individual broadcasters, individual media people that actually do some research and start talking to the real problems in the United States. If we really want to get to what's going on, we need to look at how we fix our economy, because the economy will fix a lot of other issues. You want to bring someone up out of the ghetto, give them a good job. Give them a way to make money that isn't a criminal offense. And you'll see overnight that things change for them. There's a lot of people that are okay with living on the American taxpayer dime. I'm not. In my entire time that I have been out of work, so to say, as I've gotten ready to launch my business, I took my retirement out, which was my money. I had to pay a shit ton of money to the federal government in taxes to use that money. But I'm starting my own business, and I will roll forward on my own, with my shield or without it, or on it. If I need to find a job working as a dishwasher for a while I get my business going so I have extra capital to pay for bills, I'm going to do it. Because that's what America has always been about, is that struggle that we will survive. We will get by. Despite the government, despite the hurdles that are put in front of us, we will get by. And I have no doubt in my mind that the American people will survive, and our culture will flourish. Like, share, subscribe, be great.